Everyone who matters understands the general concept of LEGO Star Wars, the video game. If you know someone who doesn't, they don't matter. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. This classic 2005 game presented the groundbreaking concept. What if you were LEGO, but also Star Wars? It is great. It was actually the first real game my parents ever got me, and boy howdy, that has led me down some interesting roads all these years later. But we're not talking about that one today. Everyone already understands that one. Catch up now. We're talking about this one. The Game Boy Advance, for those of you too young to remember, was like the Game Boy, but advanced. This isn't saying much because handheld gaming was real weak back then, so everyone had to make special ports of their games so that some semblance of a version could be played on the device. Sometimes these were great, like Justice League Heroes, The Flash, which I talked about previously. Sometimes though, these were LEGO Star Wars on the GBA, which is weird. This port was done by Kryptonite Games, a company I have technically covered without specifically mentioning them by name over in A Briefish History of Assassin's Creed. They did Bloodlines and 2 Discovery, the good early series handheld entries, so I never had to call them out the way I did to Gameloft and their toilet fire of a game, Altair's Chronicles. However, I'm going to have to call Kryptonite out here because LEGO Star Wars GBA very well may be the Altair's Chronicles of this franchise. You really dropped your balls on this one, Kryptonite. The basic building blocks are all there. They're called LEGO, catch up now. The now famous fundamentals are also all there. Jump around and break stuff for money. Most characters fall into one of a few specific ability classes: Jedi, Blaster, Droid, and Jar Jar. By that description, it sounds just like the console version, but not so fast. Some changes are certainly just system limitations, like replacing the double jump with one single jump that goes the full distance, or the static isometric camera, but other changes probably aren't. These changes are some of the most interesting things to talk about for this port. To start, Jar Jar isn't defenseless as he has his blue balls from the movie, for a combat style distinct from lightsabers or blasters. More significantly though, there's an energy meter for special abilities which are unique to this version of the game. Some are canon, like Obi-Wan's Force Push, Anakin's lightsaber throw, or Jar Jar running around killing every droid in sight in a blind panic. Some are less canon, like Padme's goddamn grenade launcher, or Qui-Gon Jinn turning fucking invisible. That probably would have been real useful when, you know. While these make for interesting talking points, I don't really recommend using most of them most of the time. Obi-Wan might as well just be exhaling aggressively, because the hit radius is tiny, and the damage itself is tinier. Anakin's throw leaves him defenseless for several moments, so you can only safely use it when one enemy is around at a time, and even then, they are still shooting if the lightsaber doesn't kill them right away. Qui-Gon's invisibility only mostly works, because sometimes they inexplicably still know right where you are. There are also temporary power-ups that can be dropped, which give you more powerful attacks, invincibility, or super speed. These are nice to see when they happen, but they also nerf themselves pretty hard because they last such a short period of time. You'll also find Jawas throughout some levels selling life and energy refills, and occasionally this little repair bot sidekick who is especially useful. He'll put you back together when you're killed. More on that in just a second. The camera angle itself reminds me of 2 other GBA titles right off the bat: Bionicle on the LEGO side, and Jedi Power Battles on the Star Wars side. Neither of these are necessarily great comparisons. I'll get it right out of the way. The biggest problem here is just how hard it is to line up your attacks within this camera view. It's very difficult to actually hit anything, because everything is now at a weird angle. Any character with ranged weapons is going to do a fair amount of missing, and melee characters feel like they have an unnecessarily short damage range, so you can literally be close enough to gaze into your enemy's eyes, faces, lingering inches apart. The sexual tension of the rivalry, making both of you long to just lean in and press your lips into theirs. And yet you're paralyzed. What can possibly come of passions born from opposition? And then you swing your lightsaber, and it still misses some of the time. It adds an artificial difficulty to a game already more difficult than it probably should be. Because difficulty is definitely the other big problem that brings the experience down. Now, everybody already knows I'm a hardened master Bloodborne veteran nowadays, so difficulty can be used to heighten a game's experience. Except for the bloody crow of Canehurst, he can go fuck cause, or as some would say, cosm. But the LEGO series, by and large, is known for being easier than your mom, excluding the early vehicle levels, which are in fact harder than perpetrating tantric sex in the back seat of your mom's sedan. Lasugaba missed the memo. The vehicle levels are not present here, so the normal levels pick up their difficulty, and then some. Normally, death just means you have to pick up a small amount of your money again, but in this version, death has consequences. If you die in the game,
you die in real life.
Wait, no. You're sent back to the beginning of the area you're in, which is sometimes significant progress you lose. Enemies in most areas will respawn infinitely, all take multiple hits to kill, another divergence from the console version where only elite enemies take more than one hit, and even start to whip out these high-damage machine gun turrets late in the game that mow you down faster than your mother going down in the back of her Honda Civic. One saving grace is that enemies seem mostly unable to shoot you if one of you is slightly elevated, although then you also won't be able to hit them using a blaster. Jar Jar's blue balls do bounce low enough, so it is perfectly reasonable to hop up on his log and just let him drop. Lightsaber battles have this minigame where you have to spam the attack button to overpower your opponent, but it legitimately requires such intense hammering on the button to win that the joke about motherfucking actually writes itself. Couple all this with the aforementioned stuff, and combat is frequently more frustrating than fun. And this is even before discussing R2-D2's combat. In that version, enemies ignore companion droid characters, who themselves can only briefly stun enemies, so it balances out. In this one, enemies gun for R2-D2 like he's Hitler back from the dead and also won't stop making vehicular love with their mothers. R2-D2 combat is legitimately some of the worst combat I've seen in any game. His only attack is planting a mine at his own feet. I couldn't find any way to manually set them off, so enemies actually have to step on them. There's also a weird delay before they're even able to explode, and if nothing sets them off, the mines disappear after a few seconds. Such a shame there are no scenes of R2-D2 fighting in the Star Wars prequels that could serve as a way to improve his combat here. Oh well. Not quite as bad as the combat, but still worth mentioning, the platforming is spotty. Jumping doesn't always work the way you want. Hovering requires pixel perfection, or you're stuck unable to get up onto the next ledge or the ledge you just left behind. And due to the already established camera angle, it is often tricky to land exactly where you intended. Visually, it's pretty okay. Characters themselves reasonably represent their true 3D counterparts, and it's all pretty distinguishable considering the limited screen space of Game Boy. This visual only makes sense if you're watching on a computer screen. If you're watching on your phone, the size was already more comparable. Sorry I made your life harder. Both the LEGO items and the natural environment sometimes look pretty good, and sometimes don't look so great. My biggest visual complaint is how the game often struggles with perspective on certain items. Sometimes it can't decide if something is visually supposed to be in front of or behind your character. The roster is pretty small, considerably smaller than the main port, but I won't really fault that since it has to squeeze into a GBA cartridge. Cheat codes do unlock a few additional characters, Several enemy types, and even General Grievous, are only playable this way, and there are a few other character recolors. So, if you want to play as Pimp R2-D2 or Uglier Jar Jar, you are in luck. What I will fault is how repeating characters get exactly one version of themselves for all three movies. Playable Anakin gets off easiest, here in his Episode 2 gear, which isn't too jarring against his slightly darker robes from Episode 3. Padme is weirder, also in her Episode 2 garb, when she's supposed to be running around both as an underaged girl and as the Queen in Episode 1. Athletic belly gear is definitely not appropriate. Obi-Wan is stuck in his beardless Padawan Phantom Menace look, except his character icon and his soy jack reaction dialogue bubbles look like Episode 2 and 3. It's a mess, and it's for 3 characters. If they just included one extra version of each, it would solve this problem. You and I both know it could handle 3 more characters. The money is a little funky too. Traditionally, silver studs are worth 10, gold 100, and blue 1000. So by picking up some studs here, we can see that is much less than that. Silver is worth 1, blue 5, and gold 10. They couldn't even get the order of the colors correct. There's also a lot less to smash in the levels, and a lot less money you'll have gathered by the end of the game, considering. I picked up 11,585 studs by the end of the game. To put that in perspective, I picked up that amount halfway into the first level in the console version. I know it's due to the smaller value of studs, but it legitimately makes it feel like progress is considerably slower. Cutscenes are either still images, sometimes straight out of the console cutscenes, and sometimes altered to match how characters look here, or brief scenes where something happens and someone soy jacks about it. Like when Obi-Wan realizes that his droid has been kidnapped and is about to be executed via firing squad. The still images are pretty bad. Like, I get what this is supposed to be showing. I've unfortunately seen Attack of the Clones, but this looks like Anakin is having a sex dream, and that's supposed to be his mother. The motion scenes are also a little too simple to really be considered charming, although lo-fi Lego Anakin committing domestic violence certainly has its high and low points when watching it for the 4th time because I kept falling in the lava. Collectibles are worth mentioning, instead of the mini-kit, which is iconic and pure, and absolutely the most perfect collectible you can find. Hidden around the Game Boy levels are Death Star plans. Apparently, everyone is just building Death Stars now. Finalist untouched point, which is the levels. Level design is hit or miss, as it's either too straightforward and easy, or too unclear where you're supposed to go next. It misses the sweet spot in the middle on both sides. The GBA version did have a big opportunity to cover scenes that didn't make it into the console version, and boy oh boy did it take that opportunity limply and half-heartedly, and then it forgot to keep doing that most of the time. Phantom Menace starts with the failed negotiations, like the console game, moves on to the Forest of Naboo, and then the Royal Palace, also like the console game. And I don't really have much to say about these 3 levels, they're fine enough. Next comes our first change. Instead of the pod race, level 4 is all about exploring Tatooine on foot, something the main game does not do. This should be nice, but it isn't. Tatooine is hard for literally every reason listed earlier in the video, and this level just generally sucks. It doesn't even give you Jawas to buy more health or repair droids on the planet where Jawas live. I found myself just running past as many enemies as possible, exploring as little as possible, just to get through the end of it. Next is also exclusive-ish to the Game Boy, the Gungan Battle of Naboo, except instead of an army in an open field, it's only Jar Jar in the same forest assets from earlier, and it's just like, kill 30 dudes! I do like one part where Anakin explodes the control ship, and then it just gives you limited time to wreak havoc and collect a bunch of money, so that was a cool touch. Then the level cuts to the more interesting lightsaber duel, but at the last possible minute, so that's pretty brief. Attack of the Clones is weird. The first level is a scene not present in the main game, Anakin's return to Tatooine. But the first part of the level is just the same layout as Tatooine from The Phantom Menace. You eventually get to the Lars homestead, and Anakin's like, "Where's my kidnapped mother?" And he's like, "Why don't you earn the fucking answer, you lazy millennial?" And makes you set up some machinery before he tells you, again, where your kidnapped mother is. She dies since you had to do all those fucking chores, and Anakin slaughters the men, women, children, yada yada. Level 2 is Obi-Wan investigating the droid factory, which is made up entirely of mechanical arms welding the floor, where he gets captured. Level 3 is mostly the same level, where Anakin and Padme try to find Obi-Wan, except they immediately fuck up and you have to start as R2-D2 saving them, past about 6 trillion enemies first. They eventually find Obi-Wan, and the game skips immediately to Yoda fighting Count Dooku. That's right, Attack of the Clones skips literally every scene involving clones. The boss fight arena was, at least, a new area, but he basically had me stun-locked into one place, so I literally just had to win the fight, on the spot, and could not explore. That's all for Attack of the Clones. It gets 3 levels, compared to 5 for Phantom Menace, and 6 for Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith almost completely discards the notion of unique levels, as everything here is present in some capacity in the real LEGO Star Wars. You start as Anakin saving Palpatine, which is one of the more interesting levels to talk about. I really like the way they handled the effect of an elevator going up before suddenly stopping. I thought that was a neat way to do it on the system. I'm not so fond of the puzzle where you have to hit 15 buttons in the right order, because even though it just shows you what order to hit them in, it is super easy to accidentally hit the wrong one as you pass it, resetting the puzzle thanks to the camera angle. When you finally get into the room where Palpatine is held, we actually have the only place in the game's story mode where 2 Jedi are both available to play at the same time. And then Obi-Wan gets knocked out by Dooku the moment the boss fight starts, so it's a moot point again. At least we get a cool chance to show him up for stun-locking me into the corner last time. Next is Yoda and Chewbacca running around on Kashyyyk helping the clones, who are all Episode 2 clones, not Episode 3 clones. Kryptonite. You skipped the Episode 2 clone scenes. Why did you use the Episode 2 clones? Next level is Obi-Wan going after General Grievous on Utapau. Then, the next level after that is cutting back to Kashyyyk to fight through the clones during Order 66. Credit where it is due, Palpatine's dialogue box actually changes to show either Yoda or Chewbacca, depending on who you're controlling, so that's a cool detail. After a few quadrillion identical tree huts, and backtracking the same level layout in reverse, we then cut back to Utapau for Obi-Wan to deal with Order 66, which is technically the unique level since the main game skipped this scene, but the first half is also more or less just backtracking the same level in reverse. Again. They turned 2 levels into 4 levels. Finally, Obi-Wan goes to fight Anakin on Mustafar, which is filled with droids, even though Anakin went there to murder all of the separatists who command the droids, and this level's particularly frustrating, because the lava halfway stun-locks you. It doesn't kill you instantly, instead making you take individual hits, but jumping and walking in lava are nerfed. So any body of lava larger than a puddle means you'll be destined to die the moment an enemy so much as coughs on you, if you make it out of the lava alive. Anakin's fight is also a little frustrating because his lightsaber throw is miraculously accurate when he does it. But I managed to get him stuck in the lava where he stopped attacking until the moment he died. I decided to check out a few cheat codes since it kept throwing them at me post-levels, and they're okay-ish. One code changes lightsaber colors, including yellow, like Bible Man, and a dark saber, although I don't know if that thing actually existed anywhere in Star Wars canon at that point. Please let me know in the comments down below. I will not Google it. Another cheat code deliberately made the colors uglier, and I couldn't find a way to turn it off other than resetting the game. And I feel like that one's probably the best thematic summary of my experience with this game. Nifty.